Hello, my Ireland. So before starting, I want to say a quick thank you to the Armagh, Banbridge and Craigavon Council for inviting myself and Manufacturing NI to take part in this webinar. And I want to congratulate both of them and Declan and the team at Brilliant Red for organising the webinar and achieving a high number of registrations, I believe, for this. So for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a brief overview of supply chain management, identify potential supply chain issues around Brexit, and give you some top tips for risk assessing your supply chain, as well as signposting you to some other useful resources. So I just want to begin by giving you a definition of what supply chain management is, as there can be many explanations and definitions, and sometimes it sounds a bit more complicated than what it actually is. So a common definition is that supply chain management is the integration of key business processes from end user through original suppliers that provides products, services, and information that add value for customers and other stakeholders. Obviously, depending on your product, your supply chain can be basic or it can be more complex. And it may only include a handful of suppliers, or it can include a network of suppliers and customers throughout the world. So just to illustrate this, everyone is familiar with the BMW brand, but do you know that BMW has actually over 1,200 suppliers across 70 countries globally? However, they've only 40 strategic suppliers, with 50% of its strategic suppliers in Germany are owned by German subsidiaries. So it's quite an extensive supply chain network. But let's also look at a smaller network, because sometimes it's hard to visualize what a supply chain is. So this is what's called a supply chain map, and it's a supply chain of a cheese product of an SME, including some of its Brexit impact flows. So this is a cheese producer based in Belfast, and the company gets a high percentage of its milk supplies from a farmer in Devon, and another farmer in the Republic of Ireland. The farmer would use a courier from County Armagh, coincidentally, to deliver the Irish milk. So therefore, the courier brings milk from the Republic of Ireland, crosses the border twice on its way to Belfast. It crosses from Northern Ireland to the Republic of Ireland to collect the container of milk. And it then crosses back to Northern Ireland on its way to deliver the milk. So in a scenario where there are checks on the land border, which probably won't be the case, this would have had significant costs and regulations to the farmer. Likewise, in a scenario where the production facility was getting milk from its courier in Devon, in a scenario where there is a customs border down the Irish Sea between Northern Ireland and mainland UK, this would obviously cause extra costs, regulations and resources in getting the milk product into Northern Ireland, and then distribution to the UK storage facility, as goods coming from the UK to Northern Ireland will be subject to additional checks and tariffs. However, just so that you're not completely depressed by listening to all that, the recently launched Trader Support Service could assist with these frictions on the UK to NI route. This, however, will still have to be finalised in terms of the details and the processes. But there's no doubt, however, that it's going to add costs and time to the Northern Ireland business owner. So how prepared are we for Brexit is the million-dollar question. Well, at Manufacturing Northern Ireland, we like to deliver short campaigns and work in areas where it's needed most. So every 6 months, we would work in partnership with tunes to survey manufacturers on areas of greatest challenges and opportunities. So our most recent survey in July 2020, it highlighted the high level of companies that had no preparations for Brexit, an alarming 39%. So when asked about the supports then needed to navigate the COVID-19 impact, almost a quarter required support in supply chain management, as you can see from both of those diagrams. So potential supply chain issues as a result of the COVID-19 crisis, supply chains continue to face unprecedented disruption. Some companies have seen demand for the goods and services plummet, while others will have experienced spikes in sales or encountered difficulties in sourcing materials from suppliers. As we have seen here in Northern Ireland, there were some 600 manufacturers who really stepped up to the challenge and quickly repurposed production lines or raided their own stores to produce sanitisation units, sanitisers or PPE equipment. And many of them actually took part in the ventilator challenge as well. So we should be immensely proud of the sector for stepping up. As we are now just 3 months from the end of the transition period, economic uncertainty is still here. As the politicians still negotiate trade conditions for whenever we leave the EU. It could be said that the true impact of Brexit on our supply chains remains to be seen. Even at this late stage, we're still unsure of what we are planning for. However, whether this impact will be felt immediately or over an extended period, it's really important to ensure that your supply chain is Brexit ready. And if you haven't thought about these issues and how these issues will affect your business, now is the time. So there's just a number of potential supply chain issues. The first one, changes to the legal system. So such things like data protection and the costs involved with making appropriate changes. Or even if you have EU suppliers, you need to obviously reassure them and persuade them that you're still able to comply with EU provisions. New import or export controls. It's not going to be easy to get to grips with any of the new compliance stuff that will be coming down the line. Changes in exchange rates and the effect on overall cost supply. Increase in costs and time for EU border crossings. This is for both goods or people. And the possibility of EU suppliers ceasing to trade with their ANI or UK companies if the process becomes too complex, costly and time consuming. So as companies are trying to emerge from the COVID storm, although most of those that will survive will probably be well into 2021 before they can really get back on track. So it's more important now than ever to test the resilience of their supply chains and strengthen them in preparation for Brexit. So here's a few sort of steps for risk assessing your supply chain. So the first one is to determine which of your suppliers are your key suppliers, either in terms of, say, monetary value or those that are most integral to your business operations. So you should really focus your risk review and risk assessment on these ones. Consider where your suppliers are based, like are they UK, EU or rest of the world? So the effect obviously or the impact is greater if they're based in the EU. But you should look at it, I suppose, in their overall supply chain group. Are they dependent upon one key supplier, or is this a risk spread across a smaller number of suppliers, for example? And this will help you, could help you inform you which of those are most likely to be affected by Brexit. The next step is to assess any current underperformance. So are any of your suppliers currently underperforming, as these new changes from Brexit will probably put them under greater pressure? So you might want to consider these contracts in more detail and consider taking some legal advice in terms of maybe renegotiation or even termination in some cases. And it's really important if you have a logistics provider to communicate with your logistics provider. And obviously I know that Stephen and Seamus will give you a few more pointers on that this morning. Does your existing logistics provider, for example, have an effective IT system in place to manage the increased compliancy, customs clearance processes, or even give you flexibility on certain routes, etc.? So that was a very quick whistle-stop tour of supply chain management. And obviously there's a lot more, and I just wanted to give you some signpost you to some really useful resources where you can find so much more, and you can find useful templates and checklists. And these are just a few of them. I know that some of the guys are going to talk a little bit more about the grant and financial supports later on in the presentations. But again, thank you very much. That's all for me. Thank you very much for listening. And again, if anyone wants to contact me directly, my email is mary@manufacturingni.org. So thank you very much for listening, and enjoy the rest of the webinar. Thank you.